First, I want to start you guys with a little bit of background information of what went on this summer in our preparation to come back to school. So the end of June, Governor Whitmer released her Michigan roadmap back to school for the different phases that she moves us through. So we have to use those recommendations and requirements in order to bring our students back to school. And then we have the ISD, Ingham ISD, work together as a county with some recommendations. And then in our own district, we put together our responsive return plan, and we looked at it in 3 different ways. We looked at it from an academic lens, an operations lens, and then the whole child. The academic one is pretty obvious. It deals with the courses and how we deliver our instruction. The operations is the part where we looked at safety protocols like wearing masks, washing hands, scanning kids, screening staff, number of people at athletic events, what lunch will look like. All of that type of stuff goes under operations. And then we had the whole child, because we realized that this pandemic is stressful on everyone's mental health. So we really wanted to focus on making sure we paid close attention to that when our kids return, because we know everyone's going to have a different experience while they were home this past spring and over the summer. And then, of course, our plan had to be approved by the Board of Education. And there was an August 3rd meeting, and then also an August 10th meeting where those discussions took place. So before we go any further, there are 2 definitions that I want to make sure we understand. And I got a lot of these questions in my Google form where I let you guys submit questions. And one of them is, what's the difference between synchronous and a flex session? So a synchronous session is live instruction where the teachers will teach in real time through a Google Meet or Zoom. So right now we're going to start off the year with Zoom. We're using Zoom. I just want to make sure that's clear. We might have to transition later, but we are on Zoom for right now. Students will log into here and see the lesson and actively participate with the students, and the students can respond and ask questions, or even work in small groups with the breakout rooms features. And this is a place where our teachers will be able to engage with the kids and assess, like, are they getting it? Do I need to review this again? Where are you stuck? And then those sessions last 30 minutes. So at the beginning of each block, there'll be a 30-minute synchronous session. And then the other hour and a half of the block, and I'll show you that schedule in just a minute, we call it a flex session. And that flex session offers the teachers the flexibility to call in small groups for live instruction. Like, let's say you are having a really hard time with the Pythagorean theorem in geometry, and when our around and let me help you with those triangle problems. And this also provides, like, the teachers will be available for the kids during the flex session. So if I had a question, I could pop back into my Zoom meeting, or I could email my teacher and be able to get immediate feedback right then. So those flex sessions are butted up to the synchronous sessions to encourage the kids to reach out for help in that real time while they're working on those assignments. So our building schedule, we went with a modified block schedule, just for sake of trying to help our kids stay organized. And then also when we come back from online instruction and we go to the hybrid situation, we need to limit the number of times kids are changing classes in a day, because we wanted to keep everyone safe and the number of contacts down. So that's why we went to block scheduling. Also, if you've ever been in 6 different Zoom meetings in a day, it kind of gives you Zoom fatigue. So I didn't want that for our students. So they'll have 3 classes that they're working on each day. Monday and Thursday will be hours 1 through 3. Tuesdays and Fridays will be 4th through 6th. And then Wednesdays, they'll have a entire day that's asynchronous, and except for their advisory. And don't worry, I'm going to pull up a little diagram in a minute where you'll be able to see this. All right, and we're very similar to the middle school because we have shared staff and some shared classes. So we actually have some middle schoolers that take classes with us, so we have to mirror their schedule and all be on the same page. All right, Mr. Cook, can you give me a thumbs up if you can see my schedule? Okay. All right, so this is what our schedule looks like. I'm just going to run through Monday because it pretty much mirrors the other days. So Monday, first hour is going to start at 7:45 to 9:46. The first 30 minutes of it will be a synchronous session where the teacher will be interacting with the students through a Zoom link, kind of giving them some explicit direction if they need to, answering questions, kind of giving them what the layout for the week looks like. And then there's a flex session that follows it. And if kids are struggling, the teacher can ask them to stay on available to answer questions for the kids. Second hour will look the same. Then there's a break for lunch, and then you have your third hour. Tuesday will look exactly the same, but we'll do fourth hour, fifth hour, and sixth hour. Wednesday is an asynchronous day, and we still call this a flex session because I got feedback from AP teachers and some that their kids may want to meet more during a week. So why would I limit that? If the kids want to meet with their teachers and their teachers need them, then sure, you can have a flex session on during Wednesday's hours as well. But mostly Wednesday should be asynchronous. And then we have an advisory hour in here, and I'll talk about that in just a minute, what the advisory hour is for, where they'll meet for 19 minutes with their advisory teacher. It's kind of like a homeroom to give you a little preview. And then Thursday and Friday will mirror Monday and Tuesday. All right, let me go back to my slideshow. All right, can you guys see that now? Mr. Cook, can you thumbs up? All right, good. All right, next slide is about an advisory hour. So the advisory hour, this is a place for students to connect with a caring adult and ask questions and learn about the happenings at Haslett High School. So one of the pieces of feedback from the spring was that it was really hard to connect with teachers because we didn't have like that feeling where we had one teacher we could ask all the questions to, and we could keep tabs on kids easier. So we implemented this to kind of create that sense of community, to give the kids a place to belong and be, and it is done by grade level. So everyone in your advisory hour will be in the same grade that you're in. So there'll be similar concerns like the SAT for 11th and 12th graders, or maybe for 9th graders, it's just, you know, the organization of getting through the school day and the transition piece to high school. So to help our students with this, I'm going to click this link. All right, Mr. Okay, good. All right, so this came out in a blast yesterday, and I'm also going to be sending it to your students' emails. And this is to help them get through that first day of school. So the weekend before the first day of school, August 31st, they need to check their email and accept all their teachers' invitations to their Google Classrooms. First thing Monday morning, they're going to attend a short 30-minute session with their advisory teacher and go over how to navigate the Google Classroom, what our schedule looks like, how do they turn in assignments, how do they get their teachers help, our integrity policy, and our behavior expectations for online classes. So they're going to go through all that in their advisory before the school day, before they go to first hour, first thing that's. Then they'll go to their first hour, then they'll go to their second hour, they'll have lunch, they'll do their third hour time, and then they'll have a break at the end of the day. And then their advisory teacher is also going to be available at the end of the day from 3 to 3:30, kind of an extra 30 minutes outside the school day, so that you could pop in with your student into their advisory hour and ask them questions, make sure they navigated all the links okay, because we know there are going to be kids that can't find things or ask questions. So they're just there to kind of wrap up that first day of school and see how it went. In addition to having that extra support from your advisory hour at the end of the day, you're going to get a blast from me that has our master schedule, and each class on the master schedule will have a video link to it with an introduction from their teacher. So if that part still feels like an open house does pre-COVID, where you get to visit all the teachers, you just won't be able to video, and then you follow up with an email if you have any questions. Additionally, on this handout that will be sent, I'll blast to your students next week, there are some tutorials already prepared for how to navigate your Google Classroom and how to use your Google Classroom calendar like a planner. So you're still going to get a planner when you come to pick up your stuff from me next week, but also this Google Classroom calendar planner populates itself when your teachers give you an assignment. So that's going to be super helpful for our kids to navigate what they have to do each day. And then we of course, incorporated Viking strong tips, and they're a lot similar to when we're in person. Get a good night's sleep, set an alarm, wake up, eat breakfast, kind of go about your school day as normal as possible. Set your alarm on your phone. I know a lot of our students have their own phone so that they can to be like the bell in the hallway, right? To remind them to go to the next class, and just find a quiet place to work that's free of distractions as much as possible. All right, this was probably the most popular question I had in my question survey. How is the Wilson Talent Center going to work with our students? So if you have a student at the Wilson Talent Center, this slide is for you. If you don't have a student at the Wilson Talent Center, then you just hang out for a minute. They are doing in face-to-face, in-person, hybrid model. So that means they have two cohorts. They have an A cohort and a B cohort. In addition to the cohorts, the kids are divided into morning sessions and afternoon sessions. So if your kid is in the A cohort for the morning, they go on Mondays and Tuesdays in the morning. If they're in the B cohort for the morning, they go on Thursdays and Fridays. If they're in the A cohort for the afternoon, it's Mondays and Tuesdays in the afternoon. B cohort afternoon is Thursdays and Fridays. So we realize there's going to be some conflicts and some overlapping. How we're going to support our students that are at the Talent Center. Both the Talent Center and Haslett High School is prepared to be super flexible and get this worked out so that the kids aren't overwhelmed. So if your student is struggling with I need to figure out how I get to see this or how I'm going to do this, they just need to email their counselor, Mr. Lepper, or they can email me and I can help them out as well. So the students, I went through these. We're going to provide transportation, and we're going to have an email sent out soon to you to let you know what time the bus will leave from the high school for each the morning and the afternoon session and what time they'll be back. The Wilson Talent Center is in contact with parents and students directly, so you should have gotten something in the snail mail today from them or tomorrow about your students' cohort and which days they need to report. And then also just know that both the Talent Center and Haslett High School is recording these synchronous sessions. In case a kid can't make it, they can watch it when their time is more flexible the next day or later that afternoon, whatever works best in their schedule. Another way we're going to help support these kiddos is I have a list of all of them, and I know what their fourth hour is, and I know what their third hour is, and those tend to be the stickiest parts of the schedule, the very end of the day in the morning. And most of those classes are offered in more than one section at the high school. So for example, I know I have 6 English 12s classes, and let's say I'm a Wilson Talent Center student and I'm having a hard time getting to my third hour English 12. There are other options for me to pop into where my day might be a little bit more empty and flexible. So we're going to work with those teachers and those students so that they know what their options are and whose other live sessions they can pop into. We know this isn't ideal, but the Wilson Talent Center works with all the schools in Ingham County. So it was really hard for everybody to be on the same page because we had to make decisions best for each district, and they're trying to be as flexible as possible as well. So bear with us. We'll work out all those kinks, and just know that we're going to be super flexible, and we're here to support your students. All right, Mr. Barker, you are up.
All right, good evening, everyone. So Google Classroom is going to be our learning platform. We know last year there was some different platforms that were being used, different grade levels. At the high school, we're going to have Google Classroom. There's going to be an instructional video, as Mr. Butcher already said, for students and families to log in on the first day and kind of help everybody navigate that. Each teacher is going to send their students emails to join the classroom, and this is another repeat, but we want to really remind you, Students have to accept all the invitations to join the classrooms. Parents can use their students' email to access the Google Classroom. We are going to start out with Zoom, like Ms. Butcher said. We may transition to Google Meets at some point. We're waiting on Google Meets to kind of catch up with some things that'll make the classroom work more appropriately for us. Until that happens, we're going to be on Zoom, and we'll let you know if and when we're going to transition over to Meets. But that's going to be used for our synchronous learning, that live learning like what we're doing right now between teachers and students, class meetings, advisory hour, anytime that the teachers need to be talking directly to the students as close to in-person as we can get or live real time, we're going to be using Google Meets or Zoom. Ideally, we're going to have the videos turned on to promote the active engagement and social emotional learning. We want people to be able to see each other's faces whenever that's possible. We know that that's a really important part of education, is having that personal connection. Google Calendar is going to be used to keep track of due dates for assignments. This will, with using Google Classroom, this is going to auto-populate into Google Calendar any assignments, due dates, things like that the teacher is going to post in Google Classroom. So getting familiar with Google Calendar is going to help you and your students out a lot. Weekly lessons are going to be posted Monday at 7 a.m. That's the Monday through Wednesday work. And then the Thursday and Friday work is going to be posted Thursday by 7 a.m. You should not expect to look for this stuff like very early. We say by 7 a.m. We're going to try and keep pretty close to that time frame so that we can keep everybody working along together. You can go on to the next slide, Ms. Butcher. We're going to absolutely provide regular feedback. We know that was one of the biggest pieces of feedback that we heard regarding what happened in the spring, is that there wasn't necessarily enough feedback happening. There wasn't grades happening, things like that. That is going to be changed in the fall. We're going to provide regular feedback. Teachers will be working through classroom discussions, homework, all that. The feedback from those items is going to be provided very regularly. Rubrics, surveys, emails, all of that will be available as well. For assessments, there's going to be kind of the formative or the process work as students are kind of starting to learn the stuff and they're doing that practice work. And then there's summative assessments as well. And this is going to look similar to what you're used to seeing in a typical classroom. Some of that will be tests, and obviously those will be given online versus a paper and pencil copy in front of you. Some of that could be essays in an English class. It could be projects. It could be a lot of different things, just like it would be if we were in person. But the reason we're bringing this up is we want to make sure that you understand that there's going to be kind of a variety of things. And as much as possible, we're going to still be giving the same kind of instruction that we would be giving in person. The grading scale hasn't changed. That's going to be in the handbook, just as it has been. Skyward, if you do not have family access into Skyward, please get a hold of us so you can have that. Grades are going to be posted in Skyward regularly. Now the grading should match between Google Classroom and Skyward. If there's a discrepancy, please talk to the student's teacher about that, just to make sure that that gets cleared up. But Skyward is going to be probably the easiest access for parents to get in and check grades if you're not familiar with Google Classroom like your students will be.
Mr. Barker, real quick, one of my questions in my survey was, how are we going to make sure that the academic integrity of our tests and assessments remain intact? So most of us have probably been in an online class and we've had to take an assessment, and we worry about other devices around where kids could look up answers and things of that nature. Well, this is what I'm going to say about that. There's going to be time limits on these assessments, so you're not going to have all day to take. If you're trying to Google your answers to your test, you're not going to get very far because there's a time limit. So that's one way that even at universities that worry is mitigated about academic dishonesty. The other piece is our teachers are very aware of this, and they're concerned about this too, and we want to make sure we're getting honest pictures of what our students know and can do. So there's going to be some different types of assessments, more product building types of assessments versus those typical multiple choice tests that you might see in a face-to-face classroom. So our teachers are prepared for this, and they're going to be creative and fair, and that this is a concern. So we've got it at the top of our list of things to kind of be aware of, and just problem solve our way through if it becomes an issue. But I am confident that our teachers can handle that challenge.
We would also love it if parents, guardians at home were able to kind of help us manage this, and when possible, kind of help to keep an eye on what your student's doing. We know that that's not always going to be possible. We don't expect you to always be right there watching your students take the class, especially with high school students. But when that is possible, if you can help us out with that, that would be really appreciated as well. Attendance is going to be counted for a variety of things. So we recognize that just attending a synchronous learning session, it's not necessarily always going to be possible if you've got younger siblings who are using the technology at home at the same time, or the variety of other things that could be going on, and we recognize that. So it's while we will be counting attendance for a synchronous lesson, that's not the only way that we can count your student as being there. They could be submitting work, whether that's an assignment, an exit slip from the class. Maybe it happens later that day when the student has time to watch the video. It could be complete assessment, or it could just be contact with the teacher on the class day. So an email, a one-on-one meeting, a variety of different ways you can contact the teacher. We want to be flexible in this. We also want to be fair. And so we're going to be counting this in a variety of different ways. With that, you will also be notified, parents and guardians, if a child is not participating in class. So you will get those phone calls letting you know, because we know, again, parents, you've got a lot of stuff going on. Students have a lot of stuff going on. You might have multiple kids in the same house all trying to do online classes at once. You may not notice if your student has not been going to English for the last 2 weeks. We'll let you know. If a student's having technical difficulties and can't log into their synchronous class, they need to talk to their teacher. The teacher may or may not be able to teacher can't, then the teacher will get with our tech department and we'll get it worked out. But just saying I've had technical difficulties and that's why I haven't been in geometry for the last week and a half is not going to be acceptable. Visual and performing arts. We know that this is a big hot topic. We had a lot of questions about this. For choir, we are going to have group and individual feedback for all students through the first marking period. Choir teachers already talked about, we're going to learn choral literature, vocal techniques, music literacy, and prepare for a virtual performance. Virtually, the curriculum is going to be adapted in the context of class. Grades will continue to be based on student participation and contribution to the team, and students will not be required to sing solo for others. This, obviously, with choir and band both, this is a huge change as we're looking to try and find ways to do this digitally, remotely. They're working on it still, and they're going to continue to improve on this process as we go along. Band is going to continue with instruction both online and face-to-face. So the online portion is going to happen with all students during their 6-hour schedule. Face-to-face is going to run kind of like band camp. It's going to be out using personal protective equipment, social distancing, all the other precautions that your students would have experienced in band camp this summer. This is going to include mini camps, evening rehearsals. The hope is to have a parent performance either virtually or potentially in person. We do have to follow our local and state guidelines, so we'll kind of get more details on that as we get closer to it. As with band camp, face-to-face is going to be optional. We're not going to require anybody to come in and do that. We're not going to kick them out of band if they can't or don't feel safe doing that. The concert band curriculum is going to start in mid-October, and that's going to be adapted as we continue with virtual, hybrid, and hopefully getting that face-to-face instruction later this year. Links is sorry, my screen blanked there for a second. Links is going to attend class. Your Link student is partnered up with. they're going to attend their virtual classes. Links are also going to be responsible for completing assignments posted by the links coordinator, and they're going to complete and submit those online. So this is very similar to how your link program students would have worked through last year. They're just going to be doing it online, and it's going to be kind of feeling these pieces out as we go along. We anticipate that'll kind of roll in smoothly pretty quickly. There is going to be a link Google Classroom for each hour, and there will still be links meetings at least once per month. For phys ed, we had a lot of questions about this as well. Virtual phys ed is going to provide students with physical, emotional, and nutritional resources remotely. So students will also be introduced to lifelong leisure sports. This is a big thing in finding ways to keep people active once they've gone past high school. So we're going to continue to work on that as well. Students will participate in physical activities with the instructor or doing video presentations. They will also learn about how physical activity has a positive impact on emotional status. Again, thinking back to what Ms. Butcher said towards the beginning of this, we recognize the social and emotional aspect of this with the whole child, and we know the positive effects of physical education and physical activity on our emotional states. So that's going to be a big part of the curriculum this year. Also talking about how nutrition helps with a healthy lifestyle, and then again, lifelong leisure activities and the rules and procedures for each. And this is something that students don't have to wait until they get out of high school. If you've got one of those super active kids who is absolutely just bouncing off the walls as we're going virtual, they're learning about lifelong leisure sports. A lot of it doesn't require equipment. Some of it that does has community facilities that can be used. Maybe it's outside pickleball or tennis or whatever. And students will be learning about this so they can go do those kinds of things even now. Obviously, we encourage them to socially distance and stay safe. But all right, online expectations for behavior. We've got a classroom behavior matrix. Ms. Butcher, if you can open that up.
Okay. All right, did it work, Mr. Barker?
It did.
Okay.
So as we're looking through this, I'm not going to try and read every piece of this to you, but we do have, I would encourage you and your student to kind of go through this together. We've got expectations for these different activities. We've got live meeting expectations, Google Classroom expectations, assignments in all areas. The short of it is we want students to act professional. We want them to conduct themselves the way that we know the Vikings do. And we want to make sure that they're always communicating kind of respectfully. We know that that's something that can tend to be a little bit more difficult when we're communicating via email and messages, message boards on Google Classroom, things like that. So we need to make sure that we're really careful about that. But I would encourage you and your student to kind of go through these and look at them, and then your advisory teachers will be going through with the students on day one. Success tips are there as well. Do you want to look at that one, Ms. Butcher?
I can click on it.
Great. So just a couple of our basic success tips, and Ms. Butcher kind of already touched on some of these at the beginning with the day one helpful hints. Trying to find a workspace where students can focus. It's away from distractions. It might be a place that they can kind of set up as their own to be their ongoing classroom or home office kind of thing. Following a schedule, we know really has a huge, huge impact on efficiency and getting work done, productivity. Using Google Calendar that I talked about before. Checking Skyward regularly. So this is not just for students, but parents, please check Skyward regularly. If there's any mistakes, anything that's been missed either by a teacher or by a student, it's much easier to take care of it if you check it regularly, and we find that quickly. Plugging the device in every night so it's charged and ready each day. Most students do not forget to plug their phones in each night. We know that, but please help encourage them to make sure that that Chromebook is getting plugged in and charged too. Turning off the TV, putting the phone off to the side, these kinds of things that we wouldn't expect the students to be distracted by television in classroom. We're hoping they won't be at home too. And then reach out. If there's issues, we got to talk to the teachers, okay? And that can be the student, that can be you, the parent. But please, please, please communicate. This is a very difficult time right now. Much harder to kind of look at somebody on a screen. If we can even see them on our screen, they might be on page 2 of the tile or whatever. That facial expression is hard to read online. So please communicate with teachers. And then trying to keep a routine for mental health purposes and productivity. Scheduling time to get outside and away from screens. This is going to be really big. You know, during a normal school year, students don't have a screen in front of them 7 hours a day while they're at school. It's going to be really important to take more time, be more intentional about getting away from the screen after school hours when our school hours have to be a lot of screen time. And then again, I'm going to keep saying it, reach out. We know that it's difficult. We know that it's sometimes uncomfortable, but when students are struggling, we need them to reach out, whether it's to talk to a teacher, a counselor, one of the office staff members, somebody. We don't want anybody going through this alone. And as you know, if people start to struggle, we need to know about it so that we can support them as best we can.
So one thing I want to point out real quick is about the screen time. So our day is built so that there's a synchronous session and then there's the flex session. The teachers are aware that our students do not need to be tied to a Zoom or Google Meet for 6 hours a day. They are prepared to build in some of that asynchronous independent work that doesn't necessarily require the kids to be in that flex session unless they have like a special project or a group project they're working on, or questions, or they need individual help. So just be cognizant of that. Let's say you had a day where your student was doing okay, didn't have any extra, their 30 minutes of synchronous learning with their teachers, and then they're in those flex sessions, they're working on their own. So it doesn't necessarily have to be like on the Zoom. They could be reading out of their textbook, they could be reading their English book, they could be working on math problems. So just, I don't want you to think that that whole 6 hours of the school day is all online, because it is definitely not. That is one thing that is a real, being Zoom exhausted and having Zoom fatigue is a real thing. I've definitely experienced it this summer, and it's not good for you. It's just, so we are being cognizant of that. And those flex sessions are built so that if kids need to pop in, they can, or if a teacher needs to do like a special project, they can, but they're not going to be expected to be on those Zooms and on their screens during that entire time. So I hope that clears that up a little bit. All right, we'll go back to the slideshow. We're good, Mr. Barker?
I got to finish up the slide here, but yeah.
Okay.
So all the school rules in the student planner, just like we've had before, we need to make sure that students are adhering to those. Obviously, you know, dress code's going to be a little bit goofy with being online, but we want to make sure that there's not inappropriate clothing showing. There's obviously no profanity, things like that. Those kind of typical normal school rules still apply. So please double check through that student planner and kind of refresh students on those rules. And then the Haslett High School Integrity Pledge. We want students to be honest and do their best work. We know that there's a lot of pressure on kids today to perform at really levels, but it's important to be honest. We can work with students who are struggling. It's a little bit harder to work with students who are not being academically honest. So please go over that as well with your student. Following the technology code of conduct, we have the whole code of conduct, but as a reminder, Chromebooks have a filtering software with the Children's Internet Protection Act to make sure that students are not accessing inappropriate things on the Chromebooks. Being respectful and kind to fellow HHS classmates, and of course, be nice. We want to make sure that students are being nice, care of each other, taking care of themselves, all those kind of good things that we want our students to grow into good people. All right. If students need help with academics, they have social emotional needs that are kind of starting to ramp up. They're struggling with peer relationships, whether this is cyberbullying or something else, or they're having technology issues. There's a whole list of people here to talk to. We've got our MTSS coach, Ms. Stephanie Livingston. Our special education staff, Mr. Bain, Ms. Dale, Mrs. Littleton, Ms. Runo, Mrs. Rooney, or Mr. Thomas. School counselors and 504 coordinators with Samantha Brunchweiler and Phil Lepper. Our social worker is Megan Ritchie. Speech and language teacher is Michelle Montmorency. And then also, if you have an issue pop up that you don't know who to talk to, just like Ms. Butcher said at the beginning with the office staff there, please reach out to one of us. If one of us, if you reach out to us and we don't know the answer, we'll find the answer for you. We'll get you connected to the right person, and make sure that those needs are taken care of. Again, we kind of keep saying this, but we are really focused on the whole child, and we want to make sure that are being met, but there's significantly more to it than that. We're still going to provide a lot of these same services that we've provided when we're in person, even though we're virtual. We're just going to have to be a little bit creative to figure out how to do some of those, but we're ready to do that. So if you are struggling with something, please, please, please reach out.
Yes. So for our special education students, the individual plans will be followed and the accommodations will be followed, and we plan on having the goals for you and just sticking to it just like we would in a normal school year. Of course, it might look a little different. You might have meetings on Zoom versus in person, right? And then we are hoping to also eventually phase in some face-to-face supports for our special education population to get some of those extra supports that they may need. And there will be more information coming on that as we move closer to that goal.
And this is me. It's Mr. Ferguson. Thank you very much and good evening. This slide here kind of relates to exactly what Mr. Baker was talking about here, is really all these clubs here at 18th year here of building all of these clubs. And I'm going to tell you, most of them happen obviously after school. We're going to have to get a little creative here on how they work. They're probably going to have to be virtual for a little while, but we want to keep them going. I know attendance at most of these clubs were very large and we had a lot of people, and it's another way that we can connect with our students. And actually, as I'm looking at these clubs, a lot of these clubs our sponsors are our teachers anyway. So we will be able to connect with students through these clubs, and they're going to be very important to keep those rolling. So please watch your weekly newsletters, and we will make sure that we keep you updated on those so we can keep these clubs going in the right direction. Okay, athletics, we did. I think we sent out a blast to the entire community on Tuesday evening with an update of the district's stance on athletics. And so let me kind of confirm and go over this with all of you, just so you're aware. The Haslett School District did decide at this time we are, due to the COVID-19, we will be postponing football, volleyball, boys soccer, and then girls swimming and diving. At this time, it's postponed. There are other area schools that you may have seen that have also postponed these, and if you, the MHSA calls these the kind of high or medium risk sports. There's other area schools that also have suspended or postponed these activities. Our plan is to do this. Our plan is to, in the spring with these other schools, it numbers about 7 or 8 right now. We will be having, when they do that football season that they plan on doing in March, we will also be able to, we've contacted the MHSA, we would be able to do a season, a shortened season with those area schools that will involve volleyball, boys soccer, and swimming and diving. So that's why we'd use the word postponed and not cancel. We do hope to use a shortened season with these sports coming up. We will continue on with what we call the low risk sports for this fall, and that's cross country, golf, and tennis. We have decided and come to the conclusion that with those sports, with either practices or games, contests, we can continue to social distance like we would want to do in these activities. So that's the stance that our district has taken on these sports, and we will continue to move forward with those. Okay, next week, supply pickup. This is a big one. We're going to have some supplies here to pick up. looking at the left-hand side, let's start there. And I mean, then we'll go over the times and the pickups. But number one, we are going to do the pickups at the high school. And I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mrs. Butcher, but I believe it's going to be in our media center. And what we will do is students will be required to wear masks. We are going to temperature check people as they come in. So we will be making sure that they're able to come in the building and get their supplies, but we will be doing that. Make sure that your student brings a backpack that night, because there are quite a bit of supplies that they're going to want to take home. So a backpack would be helpful to get all that equipment home with them. And then Mrs. Butcher will be sending out more information early next week, just to finalize where you want to enter the school and where to park. And we're hoping the parking lot will be completed by then, that we'll be able to get in that front parking lot. On the right-hand side then are the times for each grade. I don't think I need to read those. I think everybody can see those for the 11th and 10th and 9th graders. And then on Thursday, 12th grade, and then we'll have one final time from 10:30 to 11:30, where if anybody missed, they can come and pick up their supplies. And here they are. Textbooks, any supplies, they're going to get a planner and yearbooks 1920 from last year, a Chromebook. Make sure the students will also get their picture taken for the yearbook that day and their student ID. And the students must have a Chromebook. A technology agreement must be signed to get that Chromebook that day as well. But just make sure you kind of watch out. We will be sending an email blast to all high school parents with more information on how to enter and where to park and any other details that maybe we would need to add.
Just a little bit of information about the yearbooks. These yearbooks are for students that have already purchased them. We had a high demand for them over the summer, so we actually had a waiting list, and we'll be going through the kids on the waiting list and let them know how much, like, can get them, but after, like, we have no more. So the yearbooks are all sold and we'll be letting you know where you are on the waiting list if you were one of the people that could get one. That's pretty cool and amazing, because I'm pretty sure every year we have a good chunk of them left over, and this year we will not have any. So that just speaks to the volumes of the challenges that we rose above, you know, to this last school year to be where we're at right now, and everybody wants their yearbook to remember it. So that's pretty cool. All right, next slide. We're almost done here, guys. So student orientation and virtual house, open house. I'm just going to go over this one more time. I talked about it earlier in the slideshow tonight, that the student orientation is going to be from 7:45 to 8:15, the first 30 minutes of the school day. So what's going to happen is, instead of going to their first hour Zoom link, they're going to go to their advisory Zoom link for 30 minutes. And then from there, the bell will ring, the virtual bell will ring, and then they'll go to their first hour for 30 minutes. So first hour is just a little short that day. So that was one of the questions on my survey, was how are they supposed to be in two places at one time? They don't have to. They're going to go to student orientation, the bell ring, they'll be dismissed from there, and then they can go to their first hour Zoom. Virtual open house has two pieces to it. It has the hyperlink master schedule where you can sit with your student that evening. It'll be available actually anytime after I send it out. So if you're busy at 3 o'clock, don't stress, because you can watch it at 7 that night, or you can watch it the next morning or the weekend. It doesn't matter. So you'll be able to click on the links and go to each teacher's video where they introduce themselves and their class. And then also right after school that day from 3 to 3:30, your students can come back to their advisory teacher, talk about how the day went, ask any questions. If the parents are around and they want to pop into that virtual open house check-in at the end of the day, they're welcome to do that too with their students. And these Zooms are going to be these Zoom links are going to be found in the Google Classrooms. So that's why it's super important that your kids get into their emails next weekend and start accepting all those invitations to be a part of people's classrooms. All right, breakfast and lunch. So the meals are going to be distributed 2 days a week. So you can pick them up at the high school, and other locations are going to be determined throughout the district. It will start Monday, August 31st. You're going to watch for more information in your emails about the Meal Magic accounts and the student meal accounts. They'll be distributed through a pre-order system, and everyone can pre-order lunch free, just like during the school day. So, for example, if I wanted my students, my own personal children, to have a school lunch on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, I would go into their Meal Magic accounts and order it, and then I'd come pick it up at the high school. If you get free or reduced lunch, you would just go in and order it, and you can pick it up at the high school or the other locations throughout the district. And there's going to be more information about this coming out soon from our food services department. This is just kind of the beginning overview of what our meal service will look like. So in October, we have to give some pretty important tests that we did not get to give in the spring. And actually, it's in September. Let me correct myself. So Wednesday, September 23rd, we're going to have the seniors report to the campus. And of course, we'll be screening them and social distance them into classrooms, into small groups to take the SAT, and they'll wear a mask in order to be in the building. This is not mandatory. We have to offer it. So if your senior wants to take it, this is their day to take it with us. But if they don't want to take it, let's say because they took it last spring and they're fine with their scores, then they don't have to come that day. So this is the day we're going to be offering it for seniors. We'll most likely send out like an RSVP so we know who to expect and how many kids will be coming. Just wanted to put that on your radar. On Wednesday, October 14th, we're going to give the National Merit Qualification Test. So this is for the juniors, and they'll come to take this. It's the PSAT, but this is also the test. Their score will qualify them for the National Merit Scholarship Search. And they'll be socially distanced when they come in into small groups and wearing a mask as well. And then we have the PSAT for 10th graders, for sophomores, on Thursday, October 29th. And they will come in. And the reason why that's a Thursday and not a Wednesday for our asynchronous work, and it's going to mess with our school schedule a little bit, is that the College Board actually gives me the dates that I have to give these tests. So I don't have a lot of wiggle room and choices in these dates because it's nationwide. And then we have the PSAT 9. That's actually going to be on Wednesday, October 7th for our freshmen. And they'll report just the same with their mask and socially distance. And we'll have the times that they need to be dropped off and the times they need to be picked up available. And we'll also provide bus transportation for these kiddos too if they need it. And all of those details are going to be communicated once we get closer so they aren't inaccurate or forgotten as we move along. So we're going to have some weekly communication from the high school sent every Friday, some newsletters. We, in the spring, some of my feedback about the newsletters, I did the videos for the kids and the parents every couple of weeks. We'll probably do some of those here and there, but I'll also include the PowerPoint so you don't have to watch me the whole time if you just want to skip through and read the PowerPoint for yourself. But some kids like videos better, so that's why we do that. We will be emailing important events and information as needed, like for those test dates, the times, the pickups, things like that. Check your students' grades in Skyward regularly. Every year, about halfway through the first marking period, I pull grades with the rest of our admin team, and we look to see who's doing well and who needs a little check-in. And so we'll still be doing that with our students. So just because we're not in school doesn't mean that you'll still probably get some pep talks from one of our teachers or administrators if you're struggling. Use your student school emails. Those are going to be used a lot. So your student really needs to get used to communicating with a school email. Contact your teachers. Their contact information is going to be posted clearly in their Google Classrooms and on their web pages. That reminds me, I get asked about school supplies. The teachers are going to be updating their personal school web pages at our Haslett High School web page, and then you go to teachers and then you find your teacher's name. They'll be putting their supplies for you there. And then that's our school phone number, and it will be back in service sometime next week. So if you call the high school and you don't get us, call the admin building and they'll be able to get a message to us. And of course you can email. If there was a question that I didn't answer tonight, I tried to make sure I hit all of the questions in our Google survey that we sent out. Then just send Mr. Bar and we will get back to you with our best answer at that time. That's all I have for you guys tonight. So we're looking forward to a great year. Our teachers have been preparing their online classrooms. There's a lot of cool opportunities for them to try new things, and we are going to hold the same high expectations that we've always held for our students. That we I know in the spring, one of the biggest feedback pieces was worried about the rigor in preparing our kids for college. We're here to do that, and we will continue to do that. So if you have a concern, please contact your student teacher, and then if you need to, you can contact one of the administrators and we will work through it. But we're here for you, and we're looking forward to a great year. All right, that is all I have for our slideshow today. Mr. Cook, one of the questions that was in our survey was about returning to school. So I didn't know if you just wanted to talk about how that will happen, that decision plays out and is made.
Sure. So part of my recommendation to the board on August 3rd included a piece that said no later than October 12th, the board make a decision as to whether we were going to continue with online learning or we're going to transition back in a hybrid method to face-to-face learning. So over the next several weeks, we'll be looking at a couple factors to help us make that decision. Safety and security will be obviously the biggest priority in making that decision. Part of that has to deal with the phase that we're in right now. As Ms. Butcher explained earlier, we're working with the governor's roadmap. We currently are in phase 4, and there are recommendations that have to be, safety recommendations that have to be in place before we can bring students back into the buildings. And so we want to make sure that we have all those things met and all those protocols in place before we do that. In addition to that, we are working with our local health department to determine some health metrics for our region that will help guide us in determining whether we feel that it's safe as a region to bring students back to school. As I mentioned, we're currently in phase 4. The governor at any time could go to phase 5, which would help us in that decision, or we could go backwards and have to go to phase 3. So our goal is to get students back in the classroom. We know that that's the best way to teach students. We know we're most successful that way. And so it is not only my goal to do that, but our Board of Education is also committed to doing that. So over the next several weeks, we'll be watching the data. We'll be looking at the numbers to determine whether we can be in a position to bring students back into the classroom. So stay tuned. Anything else, Ms. Butcher?
Nope, I think that's it. That's all we have for you guys tonight. We'll look forward to seeing you guys.
One other thing I just wanted to mention that this will be recorded, or is being recorded, and we will be posting that on our webpage. We do not have a webpage dedicated specifically for our online platform, which has all the resources available. And so it's accessible on our homepage. So please take advantage of that, and we'll have not only the recording, but also the PowerPoint available. If there were some things that you missed, you can go and get that. Hopefully by tomorrow, we'll have at least the PowerPoint. The recordings take a little longer to upload, but we'll be doing that shortly. So thank you all for being here. Have a great night. We'll look forward to starting the school in just a few days. So have a great night.
Thanks, everybody.